This is Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. If you drive long haul, short haul, or heavy haul, they're here to empower and inspire women in the trades on tncradio.live. So gear down, sit back, and enjoy.
Welcome to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. We're a show designed to inspire and empower women in trucking, in the trades, and really everywhere, with informative guests, experts, celebrities, and people who are champions for women. I'm Shelley, and
I'm Kathy.
Every topic could be discussed on our rig. We talk about most everything that can help women. We want women to be the best they can be, and we like to interview guests who offer guidance to women, and that includes their health. Urinary tract infections are not a subject everyone wants to talk about, but it's an issue that impacts women everywhere. When women are drivers, they're even more prone to them. Many women get them over and over, and they become serious chronic conditions. These unresolved infections from hell are maddening for patients, who often go to multiple doctors who prescribe antibiotics that don't do anything. With us today to talk about all of this is Rick Martin, the former head of Pfizer Pharmaceutical Anti-Infective Division in Turkey, and head of international sales for Pfizer in Europe, Canada, Africa, and the Middle East. Rick now serves as CEO of MicroGenDX, a diagnostic lab that offers unique testing for things like UTIs, with special testing that's a breakthrough for chronic UTIs. Welcome, Rick. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Well, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I was wondering if you wanted to kind of educate our listeners and tell us more about urinary tract infections. What actually causes them?
Well, actually, we used to think that urine was sterile, that the tool we were using to measure whether there were microbes, bacteria, or fungus in our urine was a traditional culture where you have to grow the bacteria. And a lot of these bacteria simply would not grow, so the assumption made was that urine was sterile. Well, we now know, thanks to the technologies like ours and molecular technology, where you're not trying to grow bacteria, but you're identifying them by their DNA. If you find their DNA, you know that they're there. And so we now have learned is that our urinary tract has a microbiome, which essentially means there's a community of microbes that are living in your urinary tract. And most people don't know or realize that your body is actually made up of more bacteria than host cells. The bacteria in our bodies outnumber our host cells 10 to 1. And we need those microbes to survive. So when we have a community of microbes in our urinary tract, and all of a sudden, the host is living happily with those microbes in your urinary tract, and then all of a sudden, another microbe comes in. And when that other microbe comes in, it creates a response. It could be one or two other microbes, but essentially the community is changing, or we call it dysbiosis, where somebody moved into the community and the host doesn't like that very much. So it goes into what we call an inflammatory mode of trying to eliminate those bacteria that have joined the community that are not normally there. And that's when you get the inflammation, the pain, the discomfort. It's your body's way of fighting these invaders. And so a lot of them come from, if we teach with young girls that, in terms of how you wipe, because if we know that our gut is full of microbes and we need them, and our colon is full of microbes. So if those microbes find their way from your colon into the vaginal tract and then up into your urinary tract, then they're going to join the other microbes up there, and the other microbes are not going to like it. So there's going to be a response. It could be also from your partner. We've had some really interesting studies where we tested both couples, and we basically found that the partner was reinfecting the other one every time they would have intercourse. Mm-hmm. So there could be a number of ways that microbes are going to find their way into the urinary tract and cause this dysbiosis, or this disruption of the community. And that's essentially what a urinary tract it is. And obviously it can be extremely painful. You could have blood in your urine. And so when you want to treat that, you really need to know which bacteria or fungus have joined or in there. And so that's where our technology comes into play, because we can accurately determine which species of bacteria or fungus are in the urinary tract. So now with that information, we can make an informed decision on which antibiotic, because a lot of people think, well, if I have an infection, I just take an antibiotic and that all antibiotics work against all bacteria. Well, that's not the case. The pharmaceutical companies who design the antibiotics are designing them to kill certain types of bacteria. So they could design for what we call a gram-negative, like E. coli, or it could be some gram-positives, or what we call anaerobes. So there's different types of bacteria and different mechanisms for how they are killed. And so that's where antibiotics are different. And if you don't know the right drug, you won't get the right drug if you don't have the right bug, basically.
Oh, sure.
So if you're relying on a technology that doesn't identify them, then your physician is treating what we call empirically, which means basically they say, well, I've treated UTIs without culture results, without direction, but I always use Bactrim or Macrobid, and it works maybe 80% of the time. And so they kind of approach each new patient's infection with, well, I'm going to go with the antibiotic that seems to always, most of the time, will work. Well, it's the poor 10 or 20% of the time where it doesn't work for those patients, where the whole idea of guessing or treating empirically fails, and then the patient's still suffering. Then the doctor has to say, well, let's try a different antibiotic, versus really having a really good diagnostic test to say, I need to know exactly what I'm treating. So let's find out what we're treating and put you on the right antibiotic and not go through these multiple rounds of antibiotics.
That makes total sense. Are women more prone to UTIs than men?
Oh, definitely. When men get a urinary tract infection, we have what's called a lower UTI or an upper UTI. Men normally get upper UTIs, upper urinary tract infections, which is essentially involvement of your kidneys. And when men get them, it's usually they're going into the hospital. Women, it's usually a lower urinary tract infection. The urethra is much shorter in women, so it's easier for those microbes to find their way up into your bladder, into your urinary tract, versus men. So most women will have, 50% of women will have a urinary tract once in their lifetime. So it's very high with women. It's the most common infection of all infections.
It just occurred to me, obviously women use tampons and that sort of thing. Can they create a problem?
Yes.
As well? Okay.
Anything that is going to change the community or the microbiome in the vaginal tract could potentially, that those microbes will find their way up into the urinary tract. They'll move in with the other microbes. And again, if they are not normally there, then your body is going to react to them and have a response or an inflammatory response where they're going to try to eliminate them.
Sure. UTIs can be pretty serious. Kathy, didn't you say that there was a woman on your crew who ended up with dialysis or something?
Yeah, no, where I work up in an open pit mine, bathrooms are few and far between. We operate really big equipment, so we got to pull. I mean, it's production, right? We're hauling ore and oil and stuff, so for us to pull over, it takes time to get, stop the truck, get off the truck, do all our safety gears, go to the bathroom, come back, do our walk around. It's very time consuming just to go to the bathroom. And bathrooms aren't always, there's not like, our mine is very big and there's very limited to bathrooms. So the women, men could just pull over for a quick, whip, just go off the side of the truck, no problem. Right. Women, it's more of a procedure, right? So the women, especially the new ones coming on site, they don't want to, rock the boat by taking time by pulling the truck over and going to the bathroom. So they're limiting their water intake, or they don't want to be spoken to because you're taking too many bathroom breaks if you take 5 or 6 during a 13-hour period. So the women tend to hold their pee until they actually get a lunch break. Well, a lot of the times, and this happens, I've had it I've been there for 9 years, and at least once a year I get one. And one lady was so adamant about not taking bathroom breaks and whatever. She got a really bad urinary tract infection and delayed getting the help that she needed for the antibiotics. Said, oh, it'll pass, whatever. She ended up having to get dialysis at the end. And actually, they had to take her off the truck. She had to find a different job in the company to go work where there was a bathroom more available for her. So And a few of the women actually have had, like you were saying, blood in their urine and had to be taken off the truck for a while until they healed properly. One lady kept passing out. Like, it was just, and it's crazy. And I tell these ladies, if you got to go, just go.
Right.
Don't hold it. Go.
Yep. Yep.
You know, they're not going to fire you because you're going to the bathroom, right?
So, Rick, just holding urine, can that create a problem because it increases the microbiome and some of the predatorial bacteria?
Yeah, I've heard this many times before, and I'm sure there's probably papers published on this. But yes, it's definitely a factor that if they hold it for extended periods of times, and when she talked about the woman that had dialysis, well, that's really where it's moved from a lower urinary tract infection up to the upper urinary tract in the kidneys. And then just like when men get them and they're usually upper urinary tract, that's serious, and that's usually hospitalization, or eventually, the kidneys basically are infected and shut down, and that's when you have to go to dialysis. So yeah, definitely. There's many case reports of where women have just, delay, as you said, don't drink enough liquids. All those are contributing factors to potentially changing that microbiome in your urinary tract to cause an infection.
Can this also cause a urine backup into the kidneys if you retain urine too long in your bladder?
Yes, yeah, definitely. That's what usually causes the upper urinary tract infections, where, or if it remains untreated. So if you have a lower urinary tract infection and you don't get the right antibiotic on board, then eventually it will move up into the kidneys and the upper urinary tract.
I was going to say, I have a history of getting UTIs, like, since I was in my teens. And I remember, just like you said earlier, I'd gone to the doctor, I think when I was in my early 20s, and because I was sick of getting these UTIs, and he told me that I was wiping wrong. And when I went to the bathroom, I'm like, what are you, you're joking. Number one, how the heck do you know how I wipe? He says, well, if you obviously have a history of this, chances are you're not wiping properly. You're supposed to wipe from front to back, not back to front, because like you said, you're bringing bacteria from the colon all the way to the front. And it didn't make sense when he said it, but the more I was thinking about it, he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. And it sounds kind of funny saying that, but women who are experiencing frequent UTIs, maybe really check on your bathroom habits, right?
That would make sense.
And your partner. I mean, so if your partner is obviously when you have intercourse, then there's microbes being brought in from your partner, and so women will get treated, they'll respond, and then next time they have sex again, all of a sudden, the UTI is back. So then they start looking at the partners like, I think you need to be tested and treated.
Sure, yeah. So these microbes can actually live on your partner if they aren't treated. It's not something like a simple shower would take care of them.
It can, but again, if the male has, again, a microbiome within their urinary tract, within their seminal vesicles, and even the transfer of, we call excreted prostate secretions or semen, they all bring microbes into the community, and so all of those can be contributing factors. So yes, even if we actually had a series of case studies where and it was a male truck driver who constantly had fungal infections in his groin area, and when his spouse was getting UTIs, the urologist did a sample from him and found that the source of it was basically his dermatitis or his groin infection.
Interesting. Now, I'm seeing here that traditional culture tests for UTIs have a 50% chance of showing nothing useful. But you have a technology that's a whole lot more accurate. I find this very inspirational. There are going to be a lot of women. They're saying, yes, this is, it's about time.
Yeah. The urine, the standard or gold standard right now for UTIs is a urine culture. The word culture means to grow. So essentially, it's been around since 1870. And I jokingly tell physicians, how many other Civil War medical technologies are you still using? And there's not many. But it's amazing how medicine has progressed in diagnostics. I mean, from X-rays to MRIs. But the tool that physicians in medicine use to identify what microbacteria or fungus is causing your infection is still the 1870s concept of trying to grow them in petri dishes.
Wow.
And so, there's the perception out there that this is the only thing available, and our technology, where it's not growing the microbes. All microbes have their own unique DNA, just like we each as individuals have our own unique DNA. Every microbe has its own unique DNA, and I like to use the analogy of crime scene investigations with DNA, where they can collect DNA from victims, from weapons, from doorknobs, and they can take that DNA and go back to the lab, and then they can extract it from the samples they collected, and then they can match it to a known library of individual DNA, which in the criminal system, it's the FBI holds that national database, which individual county and police departments have access to. So if they find your DNA at the crime scene and they match it if you're in their library or their database and there's a match, then it's it's obviously very precise evidence to say that you were there because we found your DNA at the scene. Well, with infections caused by bacteria and fungus, we now can do the same thing. We can take a sample from different parts of the body, whether it be urine or whether it be tissue or fluid, and we can extract all of the bacteria or fungal DNA from the sample and then match it to a library of known, we call sequence codes for each individual bacteria or fungus. And so with DNA precision, we can tell exactly what bacteria is there. And with the culture tool, 50% of the time, the urine cultures don't even grow anything. They come back with nothing, or they come back with what's, quote, mixed flora, which is not helpful to the physician. He's trying to make a decision. He or she is trying to make a decision on what antibiotic to write, and the culture result comes back with negatives. That just forces them to guess. And they really don't need to guess. They can use a technology like ours. And the barrier, people ask me, well, why wasn't your technology readily used? Well, it's like everything in technology. When it first came out, almost 20 years ago, it took over a month to sequence a sample. Well, that's not very helpful in medicine if you have to wait a month to get a result back to say which bacteria is there. And now we have it down to 3.5 days. So like everything, over time, you get faster and better. And it was very cost prohibitive. It would cost thousands of dollars to sequence a sample to identify bacteria or fungus in the sample. And now we can do it for a couple $100. And so actually Medicare reimburses us $350 for our test. So we've removed the barriers to this technology by making it more faster to get the results back to the provider and less expensive. So it's actually less expensive than your traditional cultures, because when we do a traditional culture, we have to grow different types of bacteria. So we do what's called an aerobic culture. That's $70. We'd have to do anaerobes for the bacteria that live without oxygen. That's
Right.
Another $160. Oh, and then we look for fungus. And that's another $500. So with one test, we don't need to do different plates and trying different growing things. We can just use all the DNA and identify it in one sample. So it's much more accurate. And now it's just getting the world educated that it's available, and that to physicians to show them that it's available. But physicians are very difficult to change. They want a lot of good scientific evidence to prove this technology is superior. And so we've been doing that for the last 10 years and published more than 70 clinical trials in everything from urinary tract infections to orthopedic infections, wound infections. Because we know that if we want to get these skeptical physicians to stop using the 1870s tool that, we have to have science to
Yeah.
prove it.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Trucking Moves America Forward, or TMAF, is building a positive image of trucking by telling the story of the hardworking drivers and industry professionals who support the industry. And you can be a part of it. Learn more about TMAF and how you can join and be a part of the industry movement working to build a strong image of trucking by visiting TMAF's website at truckingmovesamerica.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and our latest channel, TikTok.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
I'm looking here at your press release and the number of species identified in urine, almost 6,000. I mean, I could see where things could be seriously missed with the 1800s technologies.
And if you ask physicians, which I travel around the country doing talks to the different urology groups and physicians, and I always ask the audience of physicians, I said, how many of you think E. coli is the cause of urinary tract infections? What percentage of the time do you think E. coli causes urinary tract infections? And they'll almost always say 80 to 90% of the time, because when they send it off for a urine culture, it almost always comes back with E. coli. It's a bias because E. coli is relatively easy to grow in the petri dishes. So that's what grows. That's what they think is causing it. But when we use DNA evidence, look at almost 100,000 urine samples, we only find the DNA of E. coli in about 28%. It is still number one of all the bacteria, but it's not 80%, it's 28%. There's a lot of other bacteria that are causing these infections.
So women are wiping correctly then.
I think, as I said, I think it could be, it's the partners. It's a lot of reasons why
Sure.
that there's this dysbiosis occurring, or this community is changing.
Sure.
I want to say something which you'll probably laugh at me, but this is something that actually works for me anyway, because everybody's different. But I remember my mom is big into, I guess, organic treatments and doesn't like too many antibiotics and stuff like that. And so growing up, like when I was young, like in my teens and I was early 20s, getting all these UTIs all the time. She said, Kathy, if you start now taking all these antibiotics, you're going to get to a point where it's overloading your body. And she said, I want you to try garlic, raw garlic, because it's supposed to be the best natural antibiotic in the world. Well, I started doing it. And the minute I can feel that twinge and I got to go to the bathroom too often and nothing's coming out, the early symptoms, I go and I'll cut up 2 or 3 large chunks of raw garlic, and I'll go get that the pure cranberry juice, not the one with sugar.
Yep.
And I'll drink a whole bottle of that, and I'll have consistent garlic intake for one day. And I kid you not, by the next day it's gone.
Wow.
It for me, it just works. It just that initial, I know it's there, and I am going to the bathroom 5-6 times and nothing's coming out. Well, the minute after a day, it's completely gone. So,
well, the reason why those things work is because, remember, there's the bacteria in your body outnumber your host cells 10 to 1.
yeah.
So everything you consume is impacting the microbiome in your gut. And then obviously you're digesting. And so those microbes are finding their way and they're impacting throughout the communities within your body. So that's why those types of approaches sometimes will work for people, where it's essentially changing the microbiome and it's in a positive way.
What do you think? Like, I was an LPN for 13 years, and I worked for 6 months on the kidney unit and on the dialysis and stuff. And the very first day that before we even went on the unit, we had to take a course with the nurse practitioner. And we're sitting there with a book like an inch thick just on the kidney. And she asks us, okay, what is the number one cause of kidney failure? So people are given, random answers, and we were all wrong. She said, nope. She said the number one cause of kidney failure is ibuprofen. And everyone was stunned, right? And the way she explained it, and it made a lot of sense. I mean, people are taking, they take extra strength ibuprofen, and then they end up, it's not working. So they'll take more and more, and they pop them like candy. And all depending on your body size, shape, and, your internal, I guess, not your chemistry, but the way you process things, everybody's different. Yeah. I don't take any pills ever since, my nursing days. I take the little of anything. And I usually try and go the natural way. And I'm kind of wondering if that doesn't have something to play in factor with it as well, is the fact that people, their bodies are so overwhelmed with different toxins and poisons that it becomes too much for the kidneys to filter through. But I mean, because I don't take it barely anything, so that when I do get an infection, when I do try something more on the natural side, it works quicker for me than it would somebody else who's already body's filled with toxins. That's just my idea, but could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of natural things have antimicrobial properties. Yeah. I mean, you look at penicillin, and the first antibiotics were, came from soil and mold. So it's and I'm sure if you look back before antibiotics, and whether it's in Native Americans or using things that had antimicrobial properties that were natural and were taken, and they figured out over many years that which ones were effective. Pharmaceutical companies spend a lot of time going into even the Amazon jungle looking for basic natural products and looking at their antimicrobial properties. So it's not surprising that some of these and obviously with cranberry juice, although there has been research done looking at large studies seeing the efficacy of cranberry juice, and again, when you look at large numbers, it's found that it didn't have the impact. But everybody's different. There's going to be a subset of patients that are going to be that it is going to work. But if you start averaging out larger numbers, you're going to find that it doesn't work as well. So.
Does cranberry juice work because it's more acidic?
Yes, I think it's the pH that's impacting the environment. So,
okay. Yep. I think your test is really a breakthrough, because antibiotics, if they're used incorrectly, there's antibiotic resistance. And I would think that this would dial things in, so we still have antibiotics out there to fight bad infections.
And that's exactly what we see from, if you look at, we have on our website, there's a video of actual women testimonials that have gone for years of suffering from these recurrent and chronic UTIs. And I look at our reports on a daily basis. And when I'm doing talks, I'll present cases of women that were terrible recurrent UTIs. And you'll see in their samples, because we look for what's called the resistant genes. So we know if Bactrim is resistant because the bacteria will acquire a gene that essentially makes it so the antibiotic doesn't work. And so we can identify those genes, and we'll see women with resistant genes in 5 or 6 classes of antibiotics. And the reason that's happening is because they're treating their providers are treating them blindly. They're just throwing one antibiotic after another. Yeah. And if it's the wrong antibiotic for the wrong drug, the bacteria get smart and they learn from it. And so then they acquire the resistance. So those classes of antibiotics are not going to work. And that's really bad medicine, what we call poor antibiotic stewardship, because we're trying to protect the antibiotics to make them more effective versus just using them without understanding what we're treating, and therefore giving the bacteria a chance to learn and acquire resistance.
Then you have doctors that are afraid to prescribe any antibiotics, and they wait until the infection's gotten so bad that it's harder to treat.
Well, the sad part of UTIs is that, if their urine culture is negative, they think, okay, well, you're not infected because we didn't grow anything in your culture. Yeah, we have countless women that have, that's been the issue. And we've done a study where we took a urine sample and we basically split it and sent it half to a culture lab in a hospital and half to us. And 40% of the time, the urine culture came back negative. But when they looked at the urine sample that was sent to us, we found multiple species. So these poor women are being told by their doctors, you don't have an infection, because we didn't grow anything.
Right.
And a lot of these women are responding and say, well, I don't care what you're saying. I'm on the toilet every 15 minutes. And I'm not, that's not in my head. Because, women tell us stories how the physicians will say, you're not infected. This is in your head. You need to go see a psychiatrist. And that just obviously infuriates them.
Yeah.
It's because the diagnostic tool they're using is just a poor tool to identify the cause of these infections.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com. Kathy Tuccaro is nothing short of amazing. She not only drives the world's biggest truck as a heavy equipment operator in northern Alberta, Canada. She's an international motivational speaker and the author of Dream Big, an autobiography about overcoming a lifetime of trauma and abuse that led to dreams of success. Kathy inspires people the world over to change their lives and improve their self-worth. Her book will change your life. She's passionate about personal growth and believes anyone can change their circumstances and overcome their obstacles if they believe in themselves. Her life will amaze you and seriously inspire you. Be sure to order a copy of her book, Dream Big, on Amazon.com.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
So can patients ask their doctors about next-generation sequencing to test for a UTI? That's the name of your test, correct?
Yeah, it's called next generation sequencing or NGS, and it's we offer by MicroGen Diagnostics or MicroGenDX. We have started to, because some doctors will ask us, well, how do I order this, Rick? And so we call it, depending on the sample, like UroKey. So it's urine and key, meaning we're the key to finding the problem of which bacteria or fungus is causing the problem, but. They can order it as a MicroGenDX test there's not a lot of physicians or patients think that this is readily available in all labs, and it's simply not. It's big labs, LabCorp and Quest do not have this as part of their service. So sometimes patients they'll send a sample in and they'll get an EOB saying their insurance didn't cover it because they wanted their insurance carrier, maybe it was Cigna United, and they have a contract with LabCorp. And so they want all your samples sent to LabCorp. And so LabCorp doesn't offer this technology. So when all of a sudden the doctor used an out-of-network lab. And so now we don't get paid by the insurance. So we send the patient an invoice for $199. So I always tell our doctors to please tell your patients that we don't know whether your insurance will cover this or not. If it does, great. But if it doesn't, we're going to have to invoice you $199. Are you okay with that? And a lot of women who've suffered said, you know what, if I could pay, $199 and solve this problem, sign me up.
Right. Yeah. It makes it difficult with HMOs, in network, out of network. It's so darn confusing. Would you say it's a good idea if a patient's been dealing with these chronic conditions to go to the doctor and say, look, I've heard of this test by MicroGenDX, next generation sequencing, and have the doctor look into it? Hopefully the doctor listens.
Yeah, they can do one better. They can go on our website and order a kit and bring it to them with them.
Oh, really?
We've had that happen many times. I actually had a primary care doctor call me one time and say to me, I just had a patient walk into my office with one of your kits. why do I not know about this? This is really fascinating. And my response was, well, you know how difficult it is to get in front of you guys. You're pretty busy, and and if we have to buy an expensive lunch to get in front of you, to educate you, to tell you about or maybe you don't even see salespeople at all. So it makes it really hard to educate you and let you know that this is available.
So
but patients can order it.
How would that work if a patient ordered it online and brought it into the doctor's office? Is it sent out then to your lab, or?
Yeah, they basically we also drop sample kits off at the physician's offices. They don't pay for the kits. We're just like LabCorp and Quest provide the sample collection material. Once they collect this urine sample, they basically goes with a lab rec and with their insurance information, and then it goes into a box that's FedExed overnight to our lab in Lubbock, Texas, where we process the sample. We send the physician back the report of which bacteria or fungus we identified, and we give them recommendations as to what antibiotics they can consider using to cover those species. Because sometimes the doctors will see bacteria, going back to the E. coli thing, I tell them we've identified thousands of species, and all of a sudden they'll get our report and say, I've never heard of this bacteria. It's because it wouldn't grow. And so it's there, we have its DNA, and it's a gram negative. So you can use this antibiotic. So we give them some direction as to which antibiotics will cover these bacteria or fungus.
Go ahead, Kathy. Were you going to?
I was just going to say too bad, because I work in Canada, and obviously when I go to the doctor, I go to the doctor in Canada, and it'd be pretty much mission impossible to get a kit from you from there, because then the testing would have to go across border. That wouldn't work at all. That's too bad.
No, actually, we have more international samples. Women go to blogs when they get frustrated with their doctor. And so they'll go on the web, they'll search, they'll find these communities of women that are talking about us, and they'll order it. We get orders from New Zealand, Australia, Germany, UK. A lot of Canadians order our kits. And so they basically know the Canadian health system's not going to pay for it. And they just say, you know what, I'll pay the $200, and I'll pay for the to have it shipped back to your lab, so you can, I can get your report and show it to my doctor.
So how fast would that be? Because when you get a UTI, you want it over as fast as possible, because you're always on the toilet, right? So if I get the kit, I go to the doctor I say, hey, here's my kit. Can you send it, like whatever? And then how long would it take for my doctor to get the results?
So if you go in there on Tuesday and you basically get the urine sample, they send it out Tuesday evening via FedEx. It'll land in Lubbock Wednesday morning, and we do 2 levels of reporting. We do an initial fast report, which just looks for common bacteria. There's about 21 that we have in we call a PCR panel. Everybody knows what PCR is now, thanks to COVID.
Yeah.
PCR is a very limited. The machine only looks for the bacteria that you tell it to look for. With COVID, we look for specific genes that are related to the COVID virus. And we do the PCR initially, and that result comes back, by the end of the day on Tuesday. If the sample was taken on Tuesday, it lands Wednesday morning. By Wednesday evening, the first preliminary PCR report is done and emailed or faxed. And then 2 days later, so by Friday, you will have the full NGS or next-gen sequencing, where we look for more than 50,000 bacteria and fungus.
Wow.
So it takes right now 3.5 days on average. Now, the case that you talked about, if you're symptomatic and you're in a lot of pain, a lot of times the doctor's going to put you on their go-to, Macrobid or Bactrim, and cross your fingers, it works. But if it doesn't work, at least if our report comes back 3-4 days later and the doctor looks at it and says, oh, now I see what's causing this, it's not going to be covered by the Bactrim I put you on. I'm going to need to switch you to this antibiotic. So at least it gives them the direction.
Okay, gotcha. So at least they can get you started on something, and then when the real results come in, then okay, I get you. Another question I have is, a lot of people, when they're taking antibiotics, the minute they start feeling better, they quit taking them. Do you think that also has an effect on the recurring UTIs, because they don't take the prescription all the way to the end like they're supposed to?
Yep, that's how bacteria get smart and learn. Yep. It's called subtherapeutic dosing. It's basically They are not killed quite. So you take out a number of them, but enough of them survive. And initially, you might feel good, because if there was a community of, say, 100, and you took out 75% of them, and so the 25% that are remaining, they're kind of not doing anything. The host, your body's saying, oh, we can live with these guys. They're okay. Well, over time, they're going to start populating again and getting more and more. And eventually they're going to get to the point where your body's going to say, oh, you're still there. Well, here come the white blood cells. Here comes our inflammatory response. Here comes the fever. That's why we get fevers, is because it's our body's way of trying to cook these bacteria and kill them. So all the symptoms that make us feel crappy are our body's way of trying to, defeat these invaders. So if you don't take the antibiotic long enough, they're not all going to get killed, and the ones that are surviving are eventually going to come back and cause havoc.
Now, if someone is dealing with a doctor that doesn't listen to them, because that happens,
Yep.
is there information that a patient can get off your website that really details this test? Because when you have a chronic condition and you don't have a doctor listening and they can't seem to help you, you really get desperate. Would it be helpful maybe to bring in some pamphlets or some information that's printed off the web and show the doctor about your test?
Yeah, we have those information brochures that they can print off our website. They can also on the website, we have physicians that are real users that have been using our technology for years and talk about their experience. And the third thing we can do is we can set up a consult with another physician who's already been using us. Sometimes the doctors want to talk to their colleagues. So if they're a urologist, they want to talk to another urologist.
Right.
So we have a panel of urologists that have been using us, love our technology. We have one who's talked about how it's revolutionized his practice. And he was highly skeptical in the beginning, like all physicians are, and they should be. They shouldn't accept anything coming in the door. But he went from skepticism and doing what we call parallel samples. He would send a sample to us, sample to culture. He would get the results back. He would compare them. And then he would eventually started treating. The culture wasn't showing him anything. So he just started treating based on our tests. And then eventually he just said, you know what, I'm not even going to do cultures. It's useless. I'm just going to use the MicroGen.
Wow.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
TNCRadio.live is proud to carry the Steve Summers Overnight Drive Show. TNCRadio.live is dedicated to commercial drivers. We offer the news, traffic, and weather you need, and the entertainment, sports, talk, music, and celebrity interviews you want to hear 24/7. We have original shows and trucker podcasts that feature some of your favorites, like Ice Road Alex Debogorski and America's Truckin' Sweetheart Marcia Campbell. TNCRadio.live is convenient and designed for professional drivers. The best part is we're free, and you can listen anywhere you are on the road. With just one tap, you can tune into Steve Summers and us right on your phone. Simply download our app by going to app.tncradio.live. That's app.tncradio.live.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
I think your technology is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
You diagnose, your diagnostic testing tests for more than UTIs too. Am I correct?
Oh, we've saved lives. I mean, it's the most gratifying part of my job is the success stories and the impact we have on people's lives. I mean, we had one gentleman who suffered for years with a chronic prostate infection. So when men get prostate infections, talking about if you're a trucker and having to sit, that sitting is painful. Their quality of life is terrible. And this poor gentleman was, this typical approach is, again, if they try to send samples from, they do what's called a prostate massage to get some fluid out of the prostate, and they send it to cultures. It almost always comes back negative. So they put them on an antibiotic called Cipro for 6 weeks. And if it works, great. But if it doesn't work, they have to go on to something else. And so this poor gentleman was treated for years on different antibiotics and nothing was working. And he was in such pain when he called us and said, I just want to thank you for saving my life, because I suffered for years with this infection. I went to a urologist that finally used your technology, got me on the right antibiotic. And he said, now I am symptom free. And he said, frankly, I was ready to end it all. I was going to commit suicide because I didn't want to live in my life like this anymore. So he just called us to thank us.
Wow.
We had a woman that was a kidney transplant patient and down in Houston, and she had her kidney transplant failed because of an infection, and she ended up developing a wound on her leg that was being treated by a doctor who used our technology. She sent a sample off to us from her leg and found we identified a rare mold. And when people go for transplants, they're put on what we call immunosuppressive drugs so their kidney's not rejected. And those, suppress our natural immune system and then make you susceptible to different fungal infections. And she acquired a fungus that was missed by cultures, and it was a very, very high mortality type of fungus. We found it, and the doctor called the transplant surgeon and said, I found the problem why she failed and lost her kidney. And when they saw the species of fungus that we found, they called her into the hospital immediately. They said if they hadn't found it, she would have died.
Wow.
Wow. That's amazing.
God.
So I'm sure that a lot of our listeners are going to want to learn more about your testing because this could be life-saving, a major breakthrough for so many women who've been dealing with chronic conditions that are frankly just darn painful, inconvenient, and I would imagine serious UTIs, they can be life-threatening.
Yes.
So where can people find information on this to educate themselves and maybe educate their doctors?
Yeah, the best place, obviously, we redesigned our website, and people sometimes say, oh my God, there's so much information on there. Well, we had to do that because medicine is so skeptical that we wanted to have a place where we could have all of our published studies and the physicians could easily find all the information to answer all their questions. But we even have a tab for the patient. So if you go to MicroGenDX.com and you say, I'm a patient, it'll take you to a section that'll explain what we do, how we do it, and download information you can bring to your doctor. Or if you even want to order a kit, as I said, many patients will just simply order a kit and they'll bring it to their doctor and say, you know what, we've tried cultures too many times, you've tried too many rounds of antibiotics, we're doing this. And they just make the physician do it.
Oh, this is terrific.
It is fabulous.
Kathy, it sounds like something that you might be able to benefit from too.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell all the ladies, I'm going to give this to all the ladies at work, because honestly, it really is a problem for us women truckers. It's a common thing. And even though I try and, tell ladies to go to the bathroom, don't worry about, getting fired, or you got to go. But it's hard to impress on, especially on the younger ones who are very intimidated or, easily intimidated. But this is absolutely phenomenal. I'm so glad you came on as a guest. My God.
Yes, absolutely, Rick. This is I was not aware of this technology, and I'd say it's about time. Good grief. I didn't realize that the testing it dates back to the 1800s. Good grief.
Yeah. Cultures have been around since 1870, and this technology is just making a huge difference. I had a physician whose mom was in an ICU in a New York hospital, and she understood. She came from a lab background in molecular, and she understood what we did. And she said to me, she called me, she said, I cannot believe these doctors are the way they're treating my mom. They don't know what your technology is and to use it. And she was frustrated. I always tell people, when it's your loved one, then you're going to think about this.
Yeah.
Say, I want this.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
What is your website again, in case anybody missed it?
It's MicroGen, MicroGen, D as in Delta, X as in X-ray.com.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Perfect.
I really appreciate it, Rick. You've been super informative. I've learned more than I ever thought I'd learn about UTIs and everything else.
Fabulous.
This is
Well,
terrific.
thank you for helping me spread the message, and we hopefully can help more patients.
Yes.
Oh yeah, definitely. For sure. And all the lady truckers across the US that are listening to this show will definitely benefit from this.
Yep.
Yes, they are. And that's what we're here to do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thank
Have a
you.
Hey,
good
thank
day.
you.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. If you want to be a guest on the show or have a topic or feedback, email us at info@tncradio.live.
Thank you for listening to another great interview on tncradio.live. All of the material you hear on tncradio.live on our website, our broadcasts, or our podcasts are copyrighted. There can be no distribution without the express consent of tncradio.live and its partners. For inquiries, write us at info@tncradio.live.